הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
On this Shabbat leading to a momentous week to come, let's keep in mind the Mishnah's teaching. Any argument that's for the sake of heaven will ultimately endure, but an argument that is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. What was a dispute for the sake of heaven? The debate of Hillel and Shammai. What's a dispute not for heaven's sake? The debate of Korach. We all know arguing is a Jewish art. 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Not only is there nothing wrong with a heated debate, it's the Jewish way of dialogic learning that leads to discovery. But how we disagree makes all the difference. It can affirm God's presence or drive it out of the world. What made the argument of Hillel and Shammai such a model? Different as their approaches were, they both shared the same goal: to live in covenant with God. And because of it, we are even told, despite their ideological differences, students who studied in Beit Shammai married students who studied in Beit Hillel, and vice versa. They could literally love each other and still passionately disagree. But what's the model of the anti-mensch, whose argument is the ultimate offense? None other than Korach, paradigmatic rebel who accuses Moses, the most humble man on earth, of being holier than thou. Korach was slick, a guy who grew up with privilege, but tried to come off as a common man. He played on people's frustrations, tried to entice them with promises he never intended to keep. Korach's argument against Moses was all for personal gain, accusing Moses of what he himself was ultimately guilty of. Mean-spirited, self-serving, it wasn't about God at all. In these days, when different choices loom very large, let's keep in mind the ultimate aim: never demonizing, even if we disagree, always able to see, not alone the humanity of the other, but remembering that in the sacred art of Jewish argument, it has to be for heaven's sake.
הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, Ya la 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 la. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. Ya la 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 la. Hine ma tov umanayim. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim. Shevet achim gam yachad.
The song is the message we all have to hear. How awesome it is we can all be together. Even if we don't agree, even if we have different perspectives about politics or life purpose, we are together because that's what it means to create community. And by the sparks we share, the differences, our dialogue, that creates light, which is why we begin with light.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. And I invite you to lift a glass with me as we not only share in the light, but share in the sweetness of Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uv'ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'i kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uv'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat. Amen.
I am. Cantor, it's okay if I drink out of my Boston mug, isn't it?
You know how I feel about that.
All right, never mind. I didn't ask. Sorry.
And I heard you slurping as well. So
it's delicious tea.
Great. I hope you all have something delicious in front of you. We join together in song, in clapping, in pots and pans, in singing. You're in your own house. The world is your oyster as we welcome in Shabbat with Lechuna Ranana. Lechuna Ranana, yai lai 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 lai, la Adonai. Yai lai 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 lai, Naharia. Yai lai 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 lai, Litzor Yisheinu. Yai lai 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 lai, let us sing out to God, the maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Lechuna Ranana, yai lai 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 lai, la Adonai. Yai lai 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 lai, Naharia. Yai lai 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 lai. yishenu. Yai, lai, 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 lai. For all of God's wonder and all of God's light, we rejoice. So now let us listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. Lechu neranena, yai, lai, 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 la-Adonai, yai, lai, 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 na-Ria, yai, lai, 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 litzor yishenu, yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, 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 lai. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehad kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehad kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehad kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehad kodsho. I don't know, my voice is warmed up. I hope all of you have warmed your voices up and gotten in the spirit. And now as we are prepared to sing Lecha Dodi, I want to just invite you to take a moment and maybe in your own way, find a blessing. You could say it in your own heart. You could share it with somebody. A blessing for this Shabbat. Maybe something that you hope special will happen, something sweet on this Shabbat. Take a moment. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad, Hishmianu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha, ki hi v'kor ha'bracha. Merosh mekerem nisucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla. Hitor התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, שדברי, כבוד אדוני, עלייך נגלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
You remember that in Malcolm Gladwell's best-selling book, The Tipping Point, he identified 3 different kinds of people: mavens, salespeople, and connectors. At this Lecha Dodi moment, or post-Lecha Dodi, we are all the latter, called on to connect to the people in our orbit in every way we can. Consider who, after services, or sometime this weekend, you could give a text or a call just to reconnect or check in. Which family member is most in need of a listening ear, an open heart? Celebrating the relationships that we share with the people we hold most dear, we are answering that call, affirming connections that these days are nothing less than sacred.
Day and night, show us the way, teaching us to number our days, when we rise and when we lie down. Ahavat olam. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגן יומם ולילה. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות הידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Can you imagine being meshugana enough to set out from home into the wilderness of tomorrow, embarking on your life journey, not actually knowing where you're supposed to end up? In this week's Torah, Avram has the courage to let the call lead him, somehow believing that no matter how formidable the obstacle, his faith in the promise and his commitment to be a blessing would see him through to the other side. That is really the only way to make our way through this Meshugana life, not praying for a miracle that may be very long in coming, but summoning the inner strength to daily bring blessing, to spark light even in the darkness, forging that path through the storms and the sea, keeping one another afloat, thus buoyed by the hope that we see in each other.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף עליה, נורא תהילות אוסף אליה, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי ענו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי 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 לי, Adonai et Yaakov, ugealo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Knowing just how many people are struggling to sleep these days, knowing that nighttime often brings uncertainty and fear, the Hashkivenu prayer could not be more relevant today. Shield us, O God, save us. Let us once again be able to embrace each other physically with loving arms to protect each other. I share with you a Hashkivenu One Day Matisyahu mashup of sorts. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'habidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'habidenu shomreinu lechaim. Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play one day, one day, one day. One day, one day, one day. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'habidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim.
In his essay on prayer in Conservative Judaism in 1970, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel frames this tefillah reflective, introspective, inner journey moment. The essence of living as a human being, Heschel says, is being challenged, being called. Living is not enough by itself. Just to be a blessing, just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. Yet simply being alive is no answer to the problems of living. To be or not to be is not the question. The vital question is how and how not to be.
Adonai Spatai Tivta, Adonai Spatai Tivta, Ufiagi Tehilatecha. Adonai Spatai Tivta, Adonai Spatai יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Our hope is for light even in the darkest of moments. Our prayer is for healing even in the face of sickness and untold suffering. It's a hope that we hold on to, a hope that holds us up. May the Lord bless our mothers and fathers before us, bring strength to those who struggle against sickness, all those who long to be healed. We especially call to mind in our congregational family circle Scott Siegel, George Blutner, Paul Stampleman, Deb Margolin, Julie Ross, Terry Rossman, Norton Blumberg, Ian Spear, my uncle Jerry Gallner, Sam Phillip, Pat Ryan, Harriet Katz, Antonia Nolita Chipola, Susie Wolfson, Lawrence Cohen, Joseph Spinelli, Jody Kahn, Paul Wiggins, Linda Gross, June Foreman, Marvin Friedman, Harrison Sugarman, Allison Paul, Jim Jameson, Greg Kellner, Daniel Foley, Jeff Millman, Philip Levine, Ruth Pite, Willie Roth, Spencer David Nelson, Faith Powell, Jack Gilkeroff, Ken Ferris, Michelle Renee Alberts, Linda Yellen, Esther Sussner, Tom Ferreira, Joel Secundi, Avram Geller, Anna Muggia, Lisa Ring, Marilyn Brighter, Erwin Letterman, Enid Elton, and especially Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. With the names that are on your lips, if you have one, say it now. Our hope is for healing.
מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. משברך אמותינו, מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Amen. Our covenant exploration this year is the reverse of last year. It's about discovering ourselves, negotiating the multi-lane highway of how to live a Jewish life, knowing that some paths are pretty much parallel while others diverge, appearing to head off in a totally different direction. As the tone setter teacher in our monthly series, our Faith Forum every fourth Friday, what can we learn from ... We have a person from whom I have been learning, amazing to say this, almost 40 years. Classmates in our first year at HUC in Jerusalem, Lester was the go-to guy, the one who'd help you see the bigger picture if you got lost in the weeds. A Rebbe long before he was ever a rabbi. Storyteller, sage, wise counsel, friend, all in one. And most notably, as a Reform rabbi ordained along with me, he has served a Reconstructionist congregation, Beit Am Shalom, for over 30 years, together with his awe-inspired angelic wife, Cantor Benji Ellen Schiller. While being a bridge builder, bringing together movements, celebrating difference, having just finished his stint as president of the New York Board of Rabbis, the trans-denominational organization that unites all rabbis in Greater New York. He is here to teach us, and we are blessed to have him tonight, helping us understand why listening to, hearing, questioning, engaging in dialogue with one another is so essential, especially in the world in which we live today. It is a privilege to bring on not alone a fellow Red Sox fan, but a dear friend, our teacher, Rabbi Les Brockstein.
Am I there? Can you do my video? Unable to start video, it says. Why is it unable to start the video?
Oh, you know what? Maybe Tracy has to do something.
Sure she does.
Can you help?
She does, of course. There she is.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I knew it was working because it was working at the test.
Hi, Barry.
Yes, I am a fellow. Yes, I thought Benji, to all our beloved friends at Larchmont Temple, and especially our clergy friends, Rabbi Jeffrey and Cantor Tracy. Oh, yeah, so great to be with you. And I'm not here to talk about the Red Sox, but I could. I won't. So, Jeffrey, do you hear me really well?
I hear you so well. Like
Okay,
I'm right
good.
next to you, Lester.
And you see me on our special. We're in our TV studio here, our Beit Midrash chapel that we turned into a TV and audio studio back in March, and when we went COVID, and been doing it ever since. So I'm right here. We finished our hour and tuned into you, and we've been enjoying your beautiful, beautiful deep prayers.
How lovely.
It was
what
so
a
good.
treat for us.
All right, so maybe you'll
I'm
sit
going
over
to
there.
take a seat.
Okay, sit over there.
Great to see you.
All right, Lester, I'm going off camera because I want to just focus on your punim.
All right, whatever you do. All right. So, you got me? Am I the speaker? You want to put me in the speaker? Yeah, okay. View, gallery. How's that? All right, at least I can see myself. Okay. I wrote out everything I wanted to say, and I'll ad-lib from it, but I wanted to make sure that I got the essence of these stories I'm going to tell you. First, I want to say I grew up in a gigantic Reform congregation in Houston. It was a breakaway from an even more gigantic Reform congregation in Houston, and that was the oldest Jewish congregation in Texas dating back into the 19th century. The breakaway came right after D-Day. That's important. My grandparents, Aleichem Shalom, and their daughter, my mother, also of blessed memory, all left the old temple over issues of what they called Klal Yisrael, roughly translated as the all of the Jewish people, Jewish peoplehood. My grandparents supported the nascent Jewish state that was about to be born, as well as their ties to world Jewry, they having come from Eastern Europe and escaped with their lives. In other words, they supported Jewish peoplehood, Amcha. The old temple did not, as far as they were concerned. So they left and built another temple. And that's where I was raised. Reform as the day is long, believe me, but connected to other Jews. No kippot, no talitot, no kashrut, none of that. But yes, we had Shabbat, we had Hebrew, we had godliness, not just God. We had connectedness to all of the many religions and races around us, and there in Houston we were very much a minority. And we had peoplehood. We had Jewishness. We didn't have just Judaism, though certainly we had Judaism too. My bar mitzvah portion was this week's portion, was Lech Lecha, which we read all over the Jewish world this week, and that is the point. We read it everywhere in the Jewish world, no matter what kind of Jew you are. My modest little speech began in my inescapable Texas accent, see if I can do it. Ma Parsha, Lech Lecha tells of Abram, who left his father's house and followed God to a new place and a new way of worshiping God. Or it was something like that. Why am I telling you about Abraham and me? Because as much as we like to characterize Abraham as the maverick, the one who goes it alone and bushwhacks a new religious path all his own, like he doesn't talk to anybody else, a closer reading of that portion tells us something else, namely that Abraham's career is notably one of interacting with and getting along with diverse groups of nations, tribes, ethnicities, and religious practitioners. It is his ability to speak others' religious and cultural languages, a remarkable ability, and to shuttle among them on behalf of his own family and the family of nations in his midst, that gives him the well-earned title, Father of a Multitude of Nations, Av Hamon Goyim. So to answer my own question, what has this got to do with me? It is that interactivity, that interconnectivity that defined my life as a Jew, as well as my career as a rabbi. I'm no Abraham. None of us is Abraham, of course. But I am a Jew who has spent most of my time shuttling back and forth among different kinds of Jews, often to try to bring them together around common causes, and at least to get them to respect the integrity of each other's vast differences. And that is in addition to shuttling among the clergy of many different religions in many different contexts. I will give you a couple of examples. The first one is the Chavruta, which is the ongoing study circle that I participate in with 3 other rabbis here in White Plains, just down the road from you. One of us is Orthodox, one of us is conservative, one is Reform, and one, that would be me, is Reform by training, but Reconstructionist by affiliation and by my position here at Yam Shalom. We started this group in 1994. Our most recent study session was 2 days ago. Every week, winter and summer, normal time and pandemic time, and now, of course, on Zoom, we study together across those boundaries of movement. The fact that we study everything from Talmud to Midrash, to medieval commentaries, to Hasidic classics, to modern philosophy and poetry, and to each other's to each other's movement prayer books, all of that is not the essential point. The essential point is that each of us brings a different worldview to the conversation about our shared tradition. And each of us grows from hearing everyone else's way of reading and thinking even the same text. So beyond modeling togetherness, or Klal Yisrael, if you will, for our own congregations, that's actually a very important part of what we do, the group has almost forced us to find common ground among the congregations. It has edged all of us away from our own movements, more strident stances, and toward a more kind of a shared center. Our 4 congregations maintain their unique identity, of course, unique liturgy, unique theology, rules and regulations. You would walk into one and not mix it up for one of the other ones, believe me. But our multivalent chavruta has prompted each congregation to share, to borrow, to mimic, to reconstruct itself vis-a-vis the larger community in which we see ourselves. Each of our 4 congregations is very different, subtly, but very, from what it would have been if the 4 rabbis hadn't been learning Torah together for almost 30 years. Beyond modeling togetherness, well, let me give you a second story. As you know, Rabbi Serkman and I were classmates at HUCJIR in Jerusalem and in New York for 5 years. But because my name begins with B and his name begins with S, I have served in the rabbinate for much longer than he has, which is to say about 20 minutes longer, until they finally got through the B season and finally got to the S's for the ordination service. My first position was as assistant rabbi at Temple Shari Tefillah in Manhattan, because I didn't come to Larchmont because Rabbi Serkman beat me out for the job that he got, which we deserved, and he has done such a brilliant job there. And when he talked about they're looking up to me, that's nonsense, but they're looking up to him, oh my God. Rabbi Serkman, of course, has been the model of how to be a congregational rabbi all those years. Anyway, I was back in Manhattan, and one day early in my tenure, very early, I attended a luncheon meeting of the Reform Rabbis of New York City. Our guest speaker was the prominent modern Orthodox rabbi, Haskell Lookstein, who is now Rabbi Emeritus at Kehilath Jeshurun in Manhattan, and he's the headmaster at the Ramaz School, which his own late father founded. That's one of the most important Orthodox educational institutions in the world. And Rabbi Lookstein's son, Rabbi Lookstein, holds the same position at Westchester Day School right next door to you in Mamaroneck. Rabbi Lookstein's address to us consisted of a plea to us Reform rabbis to require a get or a Jewish divorce before we would agree to conduct a remarriage ceremony. Reform rabbis generally did not, and still mostly do not, require a get. They rely on civil divorce as the green light to go ahead and sanctify a new marriage for the divorcee. Rabbi Lookstein did not have to explain to us Reform rabbis the halacha concerning children born of a parent who is still married to a previous spouse, at least according to Orthodox law. The new child is a mamzer. That's not a bastard per se, that's not the translation, but rather it's a child that is prohibited by Jewish law from marrying another Jew for several generations down the line. Please, he said to us, require a get, so that your weddings don't create this problem for the Jewish people. Well, our sage teacher, the late Rabbi Stanley Dreyfus, who served as the CCAR placement director at the time, raised his hand and he respectfully asked Rabbi Lookstein why the Orthodox colleagues couldn't simply rely on the ruling of the great Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was the major Orthodox decisor of the time. And what did he rule? Rabbi Feinstein ruled that any marriage conducted by a non-Orthodox rabbi was not technically kiddushin. In other words, not technically a kosher Jewish marriage. It was just a civil marriage. And thus it didn't require a get to dissolve it, only a civil divorce. But here's the punchline. Rabbi Lookstein took a big deep breath. He looked out over the room and he said, Rabbis, I consider your chuppah to be a chuppah. I consider your kiddushin to be kiddushin. I consider your Jewish weddings to be kosher Jewish weddings. Rabbis, I consider you to be rabbis in every sense of the word. So please, colleagues, require a get for the sake of the Jewish people of which we are all a part. Thus my introduction to the inter-movement, interdenominational rabbinate. Here was this Orthodox rabbi telling me that in his eyes, I was practicing a totally legitimate form of Judaism, and he was asking me to legitimate his form of Judaism too. That is the real punchline. He wanted me to open my eyes and see him as authentic, knowing that we liberal Jews often disparage our Orthodox sisters and brothers as being hopelessly unmodern. And thus we separate ourselves from Klal Yisrael even more than they do it to us. And God knows they do it to us, but that's not the point. He was saying, let's not do it to one another. My last example concerns a group that I got involved with right about that time, and largely because Rabbi Lookstein had been a president of this group. And this is the group which I only recently became the past president of, which is namely the New York Board of Rabbis. We have 750 rabbis who are members of the rabbis. They are from all the different denominations, including renewal, including independent rabbis, but a lot of Orthodox rabbis. A lot of Orthodox rabbis. Those three magic words, I just want to repeat them. Immediate past president. I just want to savor those words for a minute. As president, one of my main tasks was to compose public statements on behalf of the board. That meant toning down my own knee-jerk liberalism, both politically and religiously, both domestically and with respect to our beloved state of Israel. I had to enable rabbis to speak out together when they didn't really see eye to eye on the issue we were speaking out about. All of those shootings and the terror attacks that seem to come about every week and a half Pittsburgh, Poway, Jersey City, Muncie, and then all the attacks on Muslims and Christians as well, New Zealand, and then Charleston and Charlottesville, etc. It went on and on. I had to find a way to come on every week and write something and find a way to say what we were all feeling, but without ignoring the fact that some of us interpreted the event in a more particular way, while others of us saw it in more universal terms. You would be correct to surmise that our Orthodox colleagues tended to see attacks on Jews as particular to Jews, and our Reformed colleagues saw them as that, but also part of a larger societal pattern. And there was every point of view in between. Gewalt, when it came to calling Israel to task for its behavior or policies, responding to various things that Israel would do, our traditional rabbis wanted to avoid any calling out of Israel, while our more liberal members wanted to speak out broadly and boldly and right away in the name of Jewish values. But self-preservation is also a Jewish value. The traditional rabbis would encounter, Imein ani li mili, if I'm not for myself, who will be? Instead of dreading this kind of challenge, I have to tell you, I embraced it. I loved it. Okay, I didn't love it, but I loved it. I loved seeing our rabbis come to a common question from so many different angles. I love them trying to find a way to live out Hillel's dictum, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. Both these and these are the words of the living God. I loved seeing how each rabbi really went to the edge of his or her conscience to strive not only to represent his or her own movement's very clear point of view, but also to kind of come closer to a common place, a common voice. Lastly, that sense of Jewish common purpose is probably what still attracts so many cardinals, bishops, pastors, imams, prelates, and gurus to the New York Board of Rabbis. They all show up at all of our events, and it's not just for the food. It's probably specifically not just for the food. They accompany us to condolence visits at mosques, at synagogues, churches, at the United Nations consulates and at embassies in the wake of mass shootings and bombings. They came with us to the New Zealand consulate after the Christchurch bombing. They came to us to Chabad World with us, the Chabad World headquarters in Crown Heights. They came with us to Jersey City. There we made a Shiva call together and then a wake visit for the slain officer. Really remarkable, all of us together, a bunch of rabbis and collars and kafiyas and all. It was really something. They know, all these clergy people from all these different religions, they know we're not liberal or conservative. They know we're not traditional or progressive. They know we're not us versus them Jews. They know that we are Abraham's descendants. And that's who they want to spend their precious time with. Like Melchizedek and Kedar Laomer in the Parsha. Just as those ancient forebears of theirs, they wanted to welcome that great human paragon, Abraham, to their respective tents and banquet tables. And so I conclude by going back to Lech Lecha, to Lechilach, if you will, back to my own bar mitzvah. And that's where all of us need to return to now, to a place you do not know, said our beloved friend, the blessed memory Debbie Friedman, in her song, to a place you do not know, but you need to know. I think that is where we need to go now, to that interstitial place, that border place, where Abraham blessed others and received others' blessings. Sometimes he was welcomed and sometimes he was shunned, but he never stopped believing in that mission that was larger than himself. And if we are to trust what our Torah is telling us, then God apparently never stopped believing it either. And neither should we. Ken Yeh Ratzon. And that's what I want to share with you tonight. Reb Jeffrey.
You can see why my friend and our teacher, Rabbi Lester Bronstein, is so beyond and why he was meant to be the president of New York Board of Rabbis. And he is the model of menschlichkeit that transcends. And he doesn't, if you asked him what kind of Jew he was, he would tell you, I hope a good one, right? He doesn't have a label. He doesn't have a label. And I'll just complete what Rabbi Lester Bronstein said. The Talmud says, Elu ve'elu, these and those are words of the living God, meaning both Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. But Les didn't tell you the rest of it. It says, but the Jewish law is according to Beit Hillel. Do you know why? Because Hillel's disciples and Hillel's house of study quoted Shammai before they even shared their own opinion. They were mensches. They were humane human beings. So I would tell you, the law is according to Les Bronstein. That's where tradition lies. I would follow this man anywhere because he is a rabbi's rabbi and he understands what the urgency of the moment is. We have to know we're all responsible for each other. And I could not be more grateful for the model he sets, nor could I love him more.
I love you too, very, very much.
Thank you, Lester.
We love you very much.
And hopefully next season we'll have a better year. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it.
Every 5 years we take it all.
Come on.
Love to binge. Thank you, Lester.
She can hear you. She can hear you.
Sending love right back.
To all of you.
Thank you, Benj. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom to all of you wonderful
Shabbat shalom,
Larchmont
guys.
Temple.
Go have some dinner. Go have some dinner.
We will.
I think we're on to our lane and with the concluding section of our service.
We are. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, לתת כתובה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו בהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
On this Shabbat, in the shadow of the 2-year anniversary of the Tree of Life Synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh's Squirrel Hill, let the words of another sage resident, Fred Rogers, frame our remembrance, really capturing the essence of Kaddish. Mr. Rogers said, "If you could only sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet, how important you can be to the people you may never even dream of. There is something of yourself that you leave at every meeting with any other person. There is something you leave behind." Kaddish is our testament that every life leaves its mark, one that memory keeps alive on the imprint of our hearts. This Shabbat, we affirm the Yortzites that leave their legacy of Benjamin Jaffe, Fanny Middledorf, Murray Haar, Alfred Jacobson, May Simpson, Luba Feldman, Stanley Pilchick, Samuel Abrash, Jack Glazer, Ann Rothstein, David Rand, Rose Mendelson, Philip H. Robbins, Ruth Lowy, Max Mendelson, Aaron Fox, Benjamin Volper, Jack Gresson, Selma Markowitz, Berta Letterman, Thelma Wexler, Ada Kaler, Linda Sampson, Seymour Bernstein, Dr. Werner H. Engel, Stanley Shankerman, Elias Strausser, Maury Levenstam, Philip Gordeski, Ida Leifert, David Fine, Louis Blum, Karen Gerson, Mary Jaffe, Joseph Karp, Lawrence Gingold, Richard Leschner, Ida Hyman, Morris Lester Marks, Marilyn Newblatt, Jack Abelson, and Jules Frankel. To those we add in our family congregational circle, 3 who have died in the past 30 days and been laid to their eternal rest. Doreen Stoner, mother of Sarah, Esther Weiner, sister-in-law of Ed and Amy Jacobson, and just this week, Lee Wolfson, brother of our member Mark. The memories of all of them are with us, along with those who've been lost to this vicious virus, perhaps battling against it, yet who nonetheless leave their legacy to us, remembering them all and the enduring imprint of their love we share in words of Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabba v'alma divrach hirute v'amlich malchute v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala ubizman kari v'imru amen Yehei shmei rabba mivorach leolam olam me'almaya yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha barichu le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen Oseh shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha. May their memories be our blessing. Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. Isn't it nice, even though we wish we could all be together, that when it's really cold and kind of nasty out tonight, that we can be sitting in our family rooms or living rooms or wherever in our house and all be together for services? I think it's kind of nice. Thank you to our clergy for a beautiful service. Thank you to Jonathan for the wonderful music. A very special thank you to Rabbi Bronstein. Your words were so inspiring and so important in these times, so we're so grateful. I'd like to wish a mazel tov to Ezra Katz and his family, who will become bar mitzvah tomorrow. We are so pleased that you are going to become the newest adult member of our Jewish community, so mazel tov to you. Tomorrow morning, you can also find online Chevra and the Minyan. I got my bulletin in the mail today. You can find yours, or you can find it online. There are so many things going on. Take a look. There is something for everyone, I promise you. But really, there's one thing I want to say to you tonight. Vote. Please, please vote. I don't care who you vote for. Well, maybe I do, but I really don't care who you vote for. This is our time. This is why we live in America, because we can express our voice. So whoever you vote for, don't waste that opportunity. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone, and Martha. Sharing in the hope for a better world, a world that can only be healed by peoplehood, as Rabbi Bronstein said. I invite you to raise your voices in song so big, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, let this world be healed through love, that we can each of us feel it through these screens. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Taiderai, Dai, 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 Dai. 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 I will build this world from love. Taiderai, Dai, 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 Dai. And you, my from love. And if we build this world from love, then God will build this world from love. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.